There is a principle. I was reading something from was a great American tzaddik by the name of Richard Rose, who probably, I don't know if anyone here's even heard of Richard Rose. Anybody heard of Richard Rose? See, nobody's even heard of Richard Rose. That's how great he was. That no one has heard of him. But actually, he was a very, very unique, profoundly enlightened being. He lived in West Virginia, actually, and he was just really just an absolutely authentic person. He didn't come from any fancy, elevated background, but he had absolutely authentic experience of discovering the reality beyond everything that we think is reality. And one of the things that Richard Rose said was, the best religion is a religion of friends. And I think that's worth considering. The best religion is a religion of friends. And he was also like a contractor. He painted houses and did that kind of work. And he said every contractor knows that you can, that when people work together, the amount that they can accomplish is exponentially increased. If you took that same number of people and each was working independently, they wouldn't accomplish as much as if you put them all together and they're working together. In 1 hour, they could do more than they could all do in 10 hours working independently. And actually, I was teaching from Reb Nachman. And Reb Nachman says basically, this is like very, very, very important because we talk about levels. We've talked to some extent about levels of attainment, levels of practice, and the implication that one can actually get somewhere, that one, as I like to think about it, asymptotically, within the apparent reality that we take to be reality, asymptotically approach some point where everything is revealed, where there's nothing concealed, everything is revealed. And that's sometimes we call the Keter level and so forth, which I want to go into a little more because it's, I think it's vital to have a clear idea of what it means to be and not to be. And, but to finish that point, first of all, but Nachman said that this, we should think of the ascent, the model of the ascent is like, it's like an old-fashioned ladder. I see them around here in New Mexico. There's still people make their own ladders. You go to a store and buy a ladder, it's like the two parallel lines, right, that never meet. But if you look at the ladders that local people make around here, it's an asymptotic ladder. Know what I mean by that? The ladder goes like this. The lower you're down, the lower the level, the farther apart the two poles are. The higher up you get, the more they're coming closer. It doesn't just go like this. It goes like this. And so Reb Nachman says that I have to understand that the ladder, why is the ladder narrower on the top and wider on the bottom? This is, by the way, it's also the symbol of the pyramid, which is also the symbol of the Magen David, which is two pyramids, right? There's a pyramid going up and a pyramid going down, connecting the two poles. And but in the sense of the ascending pyramid, the idea is that you're going to have a lot more people on the base than you'll have on the top. And so what Reb Nachman says is that you should always try to hold on to somebody, to some soul, some living soul that's on a rung above you. You can connect to. You don't have to think about it too much. This is not about dogma or absolutes or anything like that. The whole thing has to be experiential. You have to follow your experience. So it doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong, because the path will at a certain point, you'll realize you're on an escalator and you thought you were on a ladder. You thought you were walking up these steps by your own power, but it turns out to be an escalator, right? But you have to get pretty far high until you see that you were really being carried up the whole time. So anyway, don't worry about what madrega you're on. You only have to worry about two things. But I don't mean worry. I mean, take note of, be concerned with, have the kavanah that you should be reaching up and connecting with somebody who you sense can help you reach a higher madrega. But when you reach down, you shouldn't just connect to one person who you can raise up. You should try to connect to 6 people. So you're always trying to, you only need to reach one above you, but you need to reach 6 below you. So just keep that in mind. I think it's really very, very, it'll become more meaningful as things become clearer to us. What are we doing here? Where are we? What is this world? And who are we? What are we? All of these things are questions that need to be answered. Yeah, that's because of the 6-pointed star. Good one, Ariel. I like that. So it means you want to have 3 of that whole gestalt. And really, as far as the 6-pointed star is, the meaning is that you want to connect the 2 Mashiachim. We've talked about Mashiach, that there's a Mashiach ben Yosef, and there's a Mashiach ben David. And so the 6-pointed star really means connecting the triads that are pointing up to the Mashiach ben Yosef and down to the Mashiach ben David. Now, because we have Sharon Pearl here, who's like really on a high madrega, I want to make sure that we do the right thing here, and this shouldn't just be something like that kind of is spinning around in the mind. When we talk about these things, it's not just conceptual. We have to know what it means. And I'm going to say what it means. You can say you're not the Baal Shem Tov, you're not this one, you're not that one, but you are on your own level, all of these things, because everyone is everything already. The only question is how much of us is awake? How much light are we able to hold? So it's like we're like this ancient structure with all of these thousands and thousands of rooms in them. Many of the rooms haven't had a light on in centuries and centuries and centuries. So we're actually this huge structure, we're only living like in a little tiny area of it. But the more light we can hold, the more aware we can be of how huge we really are. So we can all expand infinitely. So these concepts are meant to be helpful in the sense that they symbolize to us, or they signify the 2 modes of being that we all already are, although we may not be conscious of it, right? So if we understand the symbols, then that already gives us a kind of a light that shows us where to look. And where do we want to look? We want to say that to be in the clearest place, to be in the place we're meant to be, the place we really are but don't know yet, because of the nature of where we have gotten lost. Where we've gotten lost, another way of put it, is where we were born. That's the place where we forget where we came from. So in order to remember where we came from while we're still here, you need to have these two Mashiachs. Mashiach means you have to have a connection, a conscious connection, which is called awareness, within the space of embodiment, within the experience of embodiment. That is all awareness. And that awareness is the Mashiach ben David. That's called the Mashiach that comes from the quality of David, because David means Malchut. It means the lower realm, the place where it seems God isn't, and which is exactly the place where we have to be able to reveal that God is. That's what David Melech is the energy, the human capacity to reveal the light within the darkness. But in order for David and Melech to have that power within the Chalal Panui, within the place that we have been Kivyachol exiled to, so if we change the metaphor, we can say that the Chalal Panui, the vacated space, we can also look at within the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, getting out of Mitzrayim. So we can say the vacated space, the place where God doesn't seem to be, is also called the place of constriction. It's like the reality, what's really, really, really there has been it's squeezed itself out. It's like it squeezed itself out, it contracted itself. So, but it isn't really there. It just turned out the lights, turned down its own lights, right? And so how are you going to get some light into the place? To get some light, you've got to be able to connect to what's called the Ma'or. The Ma'or means the light source. So what is the light source? The light source is called Mashiach ben Yosef. That's the Mashiach who brings the power, the anointing power, which comes from beyond the vacated space. It comes from which seems not to be in Mitzrayim, but really is in Mitzrayim. It is in Mitzrayim if you have a Mashiach consciousness that's just a part of yourself, a part of your mind, a part of who you really are, that is able to rediscover itself. It's able to remember itself as what it actually is before it forgot itself. Is this making any sense, Sharon Pearl? It said there's two ways. You want to be able to remember yourself within embodiment. In order to remember yourself within embodiment, you'll have to remember yourself before embodiment. Right? You have to remember, that's what I mean when I say where you come from. If you can remember where you come from, then you can remember where you are. Wherever you are, you can remember where you come from. Okay, so this is all totally experiential. This is not just concepts, right? Okay, so that's the Keter business, the being and not being. This is, I think, part of the problem we have with being and not being. So the Keter is I am and I am not. Well, what is the I am that is and what is the I am that is not? That's the tricky part, which is really quite simple. but it has to be clear. We have to be crystal clear to us that the Keter level means the I am that I thought I was, I am not. And the I am that I forgot I was, I am. So I am and I am not. I am not the I am I thought I was. That I am not. But I am the I am that I always was and forgot that I was. And this, by the way, this is really like just to try to speak about the human reality within the language of the Torah discourse. So because we have the names I am, Eya, Asher Eya, which I want to talk about a little more today because we need to make that clearer. We talked about last week because it came in last week's Parsha. But this whole thing, we have a tendency to parochialize these traditions. And the parochializing of these traditions, you know what I mean by parochializing? I was saying there is like Judaism is this, Buddhism is that, Christianity is this. That's parochializing. And we're putting them in little compartments, and it becomes important for us to like defend our territory, right? Well, if you haven't realized it yet, this defending your territory is suicidal. It's like that defending your territory, that is precisely coming under the power of Mitzrayim. That's the power Paro would parochialize these things. That's the tyranny, the sort of the I'm right business. There's only one that's right. I was listening, not going to mention this guy's name, but I was listening to I've been watching a lot of these videos of the Jewish psychedelic conferences. They have them all on YouTube, and because I didn't even know really this stuff was going on. So now they have these rabbis giving their testimonies about how they took psychedelics, and Art Green, they schlepped him in because he took LSD 50 years ago, and that's supposed to be an important thing. And so I'm listening to all these things, and they had one guy on one of these things, and he was saying he didn't like the psychedelic research because a certain book had come out on psychedelic research, and the author wasn't kind to Jews. He had specifically mentioned certain Jews who had problems with their psychedelic experiences, and he thought that the analysis of psychedelic experiences by this authority wasn't good because it was too universalizing. And he said, but Judaism is not a universal religion, right? So I don't know where he's been for the last 2,000 years, but the Judaism, everything on this planet has been evolving for thousands and thousands of years. And there isn't anything you can find that isn't connected to everything else. Nothing. There is no Judaism that's completely unique, and that would just be somebody's idea. So get that. That's what I mean by parochialism. But the reason I mention that is because I want to look specifically about the parochialism of Buddhism, which when we become exposed to it, we get this idea, oh, Buddhism says there's no soul, right? Buddhism is anatman, no soul, right? That's Buddhism. People think Buddhism doesn't believe there's any soul, but it doesn't believe there is any Yud-Hey Vav-Hey. There's Yud-Hey Vav-Hey, Ani Yud-Hey Vav-Hey Lo Shaniti. As the Torah says, there is this something that is always what it is and doesn't change. oh, Buddhism doesn't believe there's any something that it always is. Well, that's not quite true. You just have to know where to look for it. Because if you look in the really old, the oldest Pali Canon, the teachings of the Buddha, which is where you'll find a lot of this anatman. He says, not self, not self, not self. But he doesn't really, he's saying he's saying that the you that you think you are not. Right? What is that? That's the teaching of Mashiach ben Yosef. It's like it's the teaching of Bitul, that anything that you think you are independently, you are not. But if you go into other Buddhist literature, you go into the Nirvana Sutras, and you'll see this, that there is a something that always is. There is a something that sometimes in later Zen, they call it big mind and little mind. There's called big mind, or but the problem with big mind is that it is so this Yudevavi ani Yudevavi lo shaniti is impossible to define. That is something that has no name, but we call it Yudhevave. So we have a way of pointing to it, but we know when we point to it that it has no name. Nevertheless, it is, and that is the is that we actually are, because it is the only is that is. And as soon as you know that there is only one is that actually is, you can't talk about any religion that you can't say there's a religion. If it's not a universal religion, then how can it be talking about God as one? But as soon as you're saying that Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, you have to be talking about either there's one God or there isn't one God. But if there is one God, then that's the universal religion. Okay, so that's by way of introduction. Now I want to, so that I am and I am not. I want to put, I need somehow to get to the place that I can form the Magen David. I can form this structure, which is connected by the poles. Above I have the Mashiach ben Yosef, and on the bottom pole I have Mashiach ben David. And you can turn the thing around any way you turn it. It becomes a Merkava, and then so you can look at it like in the space and beyond the space. So there's a light, the light source is beyond the space. The light source has dimmed itself within the space to the extent that when we find ourselves in Mitzrayim, we can't find the light at all. So the question really is, if we're in Mitzrayim, if that means something to us, how do we find the light? Right? That's the issue. That's the issue. So let's look at take some text, and we'll go into this a little more deeply. Yeah, I think let's start with Exodus. Let's just look at Exodus 10, the parsha with the first couple psukim here. It says, "V'yomer Yodevav el Moshe." So, what does it mean to say "V'yomer Yodevav el Moshe"? Is that something about somebody else? Was Moshe Rabbeinu some mythical being that has nothing to do with us? Well, what good would it be for us if that were the case? Why should we bother with its story if it has nothing to do with us? Or it's just about we're reading texts and we're going to believe in. What good are these texts if they have no application, if they have no relevance to who we are and what we're experiencing? What good are they? So The only, I keep trying to read this. I only read it. I try to see, well, what does this say to me? Vayomer Yudei Vav Moshe. I have to have a way to understand this if I'm going to continue to be a student of the Torah. Because otherwise I don't see any reason. If it isn't speaking to me, then why should I spend my time on it? I have other more important things to do. So V'yomer Yudei Vav Moshe. So what does that mean to me when I see a verse like that? Well, I have in my hermeneutics of the Torah, which is based on my own experience. And my experience is, Baruch Hashem, something started to speak to me many years ago. Literally spoke to me. Something answered my prayers, and that was an experience. It wasn't like I didn't read it in a book, and it was pretty shocking. I'm sure many of you have experiences like that. It's so good. When you're really in Mitzrayim, you don't know how you got there. You don't know why you're there, and you don't even know where you are. And suddenly something contacts you that is clearly from beyond, and it's like a shock, right? It's a tremendous shock, and so that experience. That was the experience that I had. V'yomer Yudei Vav Moshe. Of course, it helped. My Hebrew name was Moshe, but this is not limited to me by any means. And this is not a personal thing. This is, I think, a universal experience presented in a certain language. So Vayomer, this something which this reality, which I didn't know existed, made itself known to me, to a part of myself that was able to receive it. Right? Because it's not historically, so to speak, I'm not receiving it in every part of myself all the time. Now, it would be great if we could, and in order to be able to receive it more and more, that's the ascending the ladders, the Sulam HaAliyah is like the higher you get, the more refined, the more Teshuva you do, the more present Yudhei Vav becomes to you, right? So the more present, you could say the more present Yudhei Vav becomes to you, you could say the more Moshe you become. Right, so we all are already, as the Kabbalists would say with no hesitation, never mind all the hierarchy of the establishments who try to control what they want people to think Judaism is or it's supposed to be. Even the Kabbalists who, of course, contained so much energy on the peripheries of orthodoxy. And that's where the action always is, right? You're going to go in the center, the more lost you're going to be. The more you Mitzrayim, that's the tremendous irony. The more you go into the mainstream and the conventional organizations, the more you will be trapped in Mitzrayim. And if you want to get out of Mitzrayim, you have to be on the peripheries. Because that's the peripheries. I remember when I first hooked up after Yudhei Vav started guiding me, and then at a certain point I got the message, because I was in Bloomington, Indiana, and the message was you got to get over there to New York really fast. You can't, because you won't be able to have any teachers here in Bloomington, Indiana, which was the way it was at that time. There was nobody that I knew that even wanted to be Jewish who I had any reason to that I knew of at that point that could be my teacher there. So I got which is incidentally how I got to meet Reb Zalman, because that was part of the impulse. It was I knew of Reb Zalman. I had to go to the East Coast to meet him. so I got sent over there. But you have to have this contact. You have something has to wake you up within Mitzrayim, or you'll never get out of it. So here, the illuminator, the light source, the guide, the divine guidance speaks to the part that can receive it and says, Bo el paro, and which is a curious verse because it says, come to. Come to means go yourself. Don't separate yourself. Don't go away from, but go towards paro. Which is very, very deep thing, right? Now, why is it deep? Because paro means that word, the root, pe resh ayin, it means like to disturb, right? Come to that part of yourself. Don't run away from, but come to the part of yourself which is disturbed. The word paro, so it has like a double meaning, because one is disturbing, bothering, unpleasant, uncomfortable, and the other meaning of that word is disclosing. It's like come to the part of yourself which is in pain, which is suffering, which you don't like so much. But that is also the place which is a portal. If you go to Paro, if you come to Paro instead of running away from Paro, then you become a vortex. A vortex which leads from who your mind is telling you are to in the direction of finding out who you really are. But in order to find out who you really are, so here the Torah says, "Come." You have to go to the place to your trauma centers, right? Paro means every place where you're holding trauma, and who isn't holding trauma? But the problem is what holds Mitzrayim together, because Mitzrayim is nothing but a prison of the mind. It's the prison of the mind that we spoke of some weeks ago as a hologram. It's a prison of the mind that is a simulation that people talk about today. It's a simulation. It's completely mentally constructed. The mind constructs it. It's like it's a very, very weird thing. It's like certain opposing forces. There are forces that you could say are they're the servants. They're the Avdei Paro, the servants of Paro, are forces that maintain the structure of Mitzrayim, not through actually doing anything except other than trick you into believing that you're in Mitzrayim. It would trick you to believe it's like you're in this prison, you believe you're in this prison, so you never, whereas in fact the walls of the prison are simply constructed by your own mind. And if you knew that, you would be able to walk right through the walls, right? Because this whole simulation, what you take to be reality is completely a simulation, but it's very persuasive. And it's more persuasive because it's not really being imposed upon us. It's imposed by the ignorance of our own minds. I mean, isn't that pretty amazing? So so the mind's construct of Mitzrayim, what is energizing? What is the food that impels the mind to believe it's in Mitzrayim, to believe it's in this simulation, which is actually a pretty horrible place to be in. Why? Because it's all built on on disturbance. It's all built on the traumas, what people call traumas, and the inherited conventional wisdom that's passed on from one generation to another generation. And I thought one of the things I noted, one of the things I thought I got out of watching a lot of this psychedelic, of see why these Jews are into psychedelics, and I think it seems to me one of the most positive things is that it's a medicine. It's a medicine for traumas that is better than the big pharma remedies. That's why they're doing it, because you can take you can do, if you have the right setting, you have the right medicine, have the right dose, you can locate, you can access, you can come to Paro, right? You can come to Paro, you can come, not avoid, not bury your trauma, but you face it. You face it. Bodhi Paro means I'm facing my own trauma. I'm not repressing it. I'm not hiding it. And that coming to Paro, then Paro can be transformed into the heat galut. It becomes transformed into a source of revelation. So it's, for one thing, it's revealing more about yourself. And if you don't know yourself, you won't be able to do anything about it. You won't be able to get beyond it. And in fact, all of this stuff also, and here this is very, 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 very tricky, because I want to say you would find that deeper you go into it, that it's all a construct, it's all a mental construct. And yet, yeah, it's dangerous in a way to say it's all a mental construct, because the mind and the body are a continuum. And so you can't separate it initially from your body. All the traumas, it's stored in the body. It's stored in the DNA, it's stored in the cells, right? So the body itself, and yet that's what's being stored in the body, and what the body is experiencing. It's experiencing it because the mind is imposing the consciousness of Mitzrayim on the lost soul, on the neshama that is lost in Mitzrayim. It doesn't know who it is, doesn't remember who it is, doesn't know what's going on. It only knows, in that sense, it knows it's in Mitzrayim, but it doesn't know what Mitzrayim is. It doesn't know it doesn't know that there's an alternative to Mitzrayim, right? That's what, so in other words, this simulation is what we take for reality. So Bo el Paro, come face up to confront directly Paro, come to Paro, ki ani hechbadedi et libo. Because I hardened its heart. And that's the issue there is that the heart has been hardened. That lev avadam. So leman shitio totai el bikirbi. Bikirbo means that so that I have created a space within which I can manifest, I can make myself known to you in a way that will be healing for you, that will enable you to get out of Mitzrayim. It says Laman Shitib, so that I can, and it's, if you're going to ask the question like, so why is all this the way it is? You're going to just you're going to deepen your state of being mired in Mitzrayim. There's no answer to this questions like that. The only questions that, and here we go back to like the universality of Buddhism. That's why the Buddha in the early text, he didn't want to talk about Mashiach ben David. And why didn't he want to talk about, he only wanted to talk about Mashiach ben Yosef. Why? because he said, you don't need to know. First, you have to cure yourself. First, you have to realize that you are sick. You have to recognize what your sickness is, and you have to get the remedy for being sick. He didn't say there's nothing after you're healed. He just said it's too urgent. First, you got to heal yourself. First, you won't be able to. So you can't, and this is where everything is topsy-turvy in Mitzrayim. You have these religions that don't know that they're in Mitzrayim. So they claim they're healing, they're this, that, and the other thing. They're not doing anything because they don't even know what the sickness is. And all this stuff that it seems like, okay, we'll celebrate this, we'll do this mitzvah, we'll do this, that, and the other thing. None of that stuff is going to do anything if you're not a whole healthy person. So you've got to have that wholeness, that health, and then you will be able to embody Mashiach ben David. Right? What do I mean by embody Mashiach ben David? If you're a healthy person, to be a healthy person, you have to do the work that realizes Mashiach ben Yosef. And most of that work, that's the work of Bitul. It's the work of Chachma. First, you have to do Chachma, and then you can do the work of Maloch Haaretz Kavoda. Then you do the work of revealing that Maloch Haaretz Kavoda, that there is no Mitzrayim, there's only Kavoda. There's only the divine goddess. There's only the goddess energy taking form and manifesting in all these different ways. There never was any Mitzrayim in the first place. But how will you know there never was any Mitzrayim in the first place? Only if you have Chokhmah. And Chokhmah is Bitul. You follow me? Now, what is Bitul? Bitul is, here's the really, really, really great principle. That's very important principle. Do you notice they have a custom in Eretz Yisrael, and the people go to the Kotel. And you ever notice when after somebody goes and they prays at the Kotel, they're a very pious person, they have a minhag. And what's the minhag? They back away, right? You back away. Now, I don't know if people think, well, look, this is very pious, it's a nice custom and all of that. But did you ever think, what is the meaning really of backing away? I mean, do you really want to back away from God? Let's assume you were right there, you're up against the kotel, and you found God. And what are you going to do, back away from God? Doesn't make any sense, right? So, but what does make sense to me? Hello, Mira Frank. I'm glad to see you there. And so what makes sense to me? I think this is the deepest thing, because the whole path of Bitul, the path of Chokhmah, is the path of backing away. Backing away from what? Backing away from Mitzrayim, backing away from what you think you are. So here's the paradox: is here the Torah saying, "Bo el paro," face up to your discomfort, place up to your feeling of inadequacy, all of this stuff. And then what? Back away from the bondage of that trauma, back away from the place where you are tied up in knots, the place where you're identified with a suffering self. So so here's the paradox: is that when I'm backing away from that, I'm going closer to God. I'm going into the light by backing away. And so it's not adding, it's subtracting. The path of the Mashiach ben Yosef, how do you get to Mashiach ben Yosef? You you get, it's what the Hindus call neti, not this, I'm not this, I'm not that. But you can't say I'm not something unless you confront it directly, right? So you have to, and here's where we come to the concept of conscious suffering, which I mean, I'd love to say, you don't have to do any suffering, but the fact about conscious, you will have to do suffering just by being alive. The question is the suffering conscious or not? So conscious suffering means that I am Boel Paro, I'm not running, I'm not concealing my difficulties, I'm not concealing my sense of discomfort. But I'm suffering it consciously because I'm aware, I'm increasing my awareness that which is conscious is the healing that is possible for the suffering and for my neshama, because it's conscious suffering. So actually, it's the conscious suffering that gets you to the next madrega on the ladder, that will get you to the next step. There's so many, we like to hear all of the sugar-coated stories, but what I find is like most of the highest people in the world that I ever heard of suffered much more than anybody else. Much more. Almost every single one of them was really, including Reb Nachman, of course. We'll take a look at that. I mean, that isn't like unusual. That's the way. The higher the neshama, the more you're likely to be suffering in Mitzrayim. And who knows? I mean, people have. I was just listening to actually somebody else who was telling their story of how they awakened and so forth. And the person said, it helped them because they read they heard Adyashanti talking about his trip and how ill he was, how sick he was, how serious illnesses, how much he suffered. And this is like, everybody wants this sugar-coated spirituality. Spirituality, it's so cool, it's so fun, it's so, I love it. It's just nothing but groovy. That's the bullshit spirituality. Not that you can't have some of that, Baruch Hashem, you can have some of that, but that's the bullshit spirituality. The real spirituality, wherever there's somebody real, they're like Chanina Bendosa, and they're like they're gonna like, however they're gonna suffer more than anybody else. But that suffering is Boel Paro, ki chigbadati et libo ve'ed lev avadav leman shiti. So if you suffer consciously like that, it's leman shiti ototai ele b'kirbo. It's so that I can reveal my miraculous reality to you in b'kirbo, in the midst of that suffering. I mean, is that amazing or what? That's an amazing Torah. This is all leman tisaper ba'ozne bincha uven bincha et asher hitalalti b'Mitzrayim. And then because you will have you backed away into the light, you're backed into the light, and you're able to receive guidance and communication and knowledge from me, then you will be able to tisaper be'ozne vincha uven vincha, then you will be able to share with others. You will be able to share with others. Et asher hitalalti b'Mitzrayim, you'll be able to share with others that Mitzrayim is a joke. Mitzrayim is a simulation. And that is important to know, is it not? Wouldn't that be amazing if you really know that? You would know that, and you'd be able to tell us to other people. hey, you're going crazy. You're stuck pretty much. You are oscillating during the course of any given day between insanity and ignorance, and maybe you have some high points here and there, but basically it's sort of going up and down. Well, the more you know, Asher hitalalti b'Mitzrayim, that all of this that you are still going through is really not real. It's not reality. That would be a very good thing to know. Ve'et ototi asher samti bam, and so, and these the signs and wonders which I have placed in them. So even though our minds, driven by the pain of traumas, of repressed and stored traumas, are creating this prison consciousness of Mitzrayim, and making us think that we're condemned. Maybe so, sometimes not only condemned, but just that there is no alternative. Yet within that, even that kind of a consciousness, there are ototai, the divine source, that reality which is beyond Mitzrayim, or which is and hidden in Mitzrayim, makes itself known, can make itself known. V'yadatam ki ani yud-heh vaveh. And then you will know that I am is yud-heh vaveh. That what everything is, what you are, what everything is yud-heh vaveh. Even if you're still not totally out of Mitzrayim, because it'd be great to say. It would be great to say that all you need to know is hear this, but there's so many traditions that they have. Like I remember in Kashmir Shaivism, Avinav Gupta says that in his major work, he gives over the teaching on 3 different levels. And the first level, he just tells it to you straight out. And he said, like, if you're ready for this, that's all you need. You won't need to hear anymore. You won't need to practice anything. You don't need to do a damn thing. Unfortunately, nobody's on that level. It's like 1 in 10 million might be on that level, but we can all hear it. But that's just really the problem. Okay, I heard it. Okay, now what? So now we go back to last week's parsha. We go back to Shemot, and we come to this very, very, very important verse, or series of verses. This is in Exodus 3. I think let's start with like B'yomer Moshe Elohim hine anochi v'al b'nei Yisrael v'yamarti lahem Elohei hovitechem. And Moshe is going through his enlightenment, the deepest enlightenment experience, right? But keep in mind that the deepest enlightenment, that means it's like the clearest recognition of the reality that is beyond time and space, the reality that is concealing itself because our minds are creating Mitzrayim. And Moshe Rabbeinu has this reality made known to him. Is the consciousness of this human consciousness can have an experience of total revelation. And that revelation is Yud-heh vaveh. I'm Yud-heh vaveh. But then, so while Moshe is processing this, because that's the whole problem, is really like is how to process it, how to bring it into Mitzrayim. All right, so because how do you live with it in Mitzrayim, and how do you tell somebody else about it? How do you tell it to your children and your children's children? How do you share? How do you return to use another example of the same universal story, which is Plato's account of the cave? How do you go back into the cave? And it's very, very difficult. I mean, keep in mind, remember what happens. You go back in the cave, you have a good chance of being murdered. It's a very, isn't it? It's a very, it's not good to, I'd like to give a sweeter version, but it's not good to sugarcoat the story. We've got to be like base facts here. Most people, the more someone is in prison in Mitzrayim, the less they want somebody to come in and reach out a hand, get them out. It's like basically the only people that want to get out are the people at the stage where they had been awakened enough by their suffering, and they have had the great merit, the zechut, to be contacted by the reality itself. As those are the people who are ready to know more, but because they have some sense that there's something more, something beyond, but they don't know what it is, how to get there, what to do about it, and all this. So those are the people you want to reach out to. They're the only ones who are going to take your hand if you reach out. The other people have to be very careful. So he says here, what the Torah says, V'yomer Moshe Elohim, Hinei anochi va'al b'nei Yisrael. What am I going to say to them? What am I going to say to the people that are in Mitzrayim? V'amarti lehem, and Moshe says to Elohim, Hinei, I'm coming to the b'nei Yisrael, and I say to them, Elohei avotechem shalachani elechem. The God of your fathers sent me to you. The God of your ancestors sent me to you. And they'll say to me, Ma shemo, ma omar lehem. They'll say to me, what is the name? What's its name? And what am I going to say to them? And say that you can go and talk about abstractly. You can have a wonderful text that talk about it, right? And but people will say, what are you talking about? Who are you talking about? Right? Who are you talking about? What exactly are you talking about? It's all abstract to me. I don't know what you're talking about. Why should I pay any attention? What good does it do me that you coming and saying the God of your ancestors sent me? I don't know. I heard of it, but I don't know what you're talking about. So mashmo, what do I say to them? V'yomer Elohim el Moshe, and here we come to a very important verse where he says, V'yomer Elohim says to Moshe, Eya asher, this is 3:14, Exodus 3:14. V'yomer Elohim el Moshe, Eya asher Eya. Tell him, I am asher I am. I am that I am. V'yomer kotomar libnei Yisrael, Eya shalachani alechem. And so you should say to the people, Eya sent me to you. I will be sent you to. So what I want to point out here is, if you look at that verse 3:14, you will find that the name Eya is mentioned how many times? 3 times, right? 3 times. Eya, Eya, Eya. There's Eya, then there's Asher Eya, and then there is, tell them, Eya shalachani aleim. Eya sent me to you, right? So there's Eyas there 3 times, and then we should add the next verse because this is all one piece. It says V'yomer od Elohim el Moshe, and then the further communication to Moshe. Ko Tamar el B'nai Yisrael, so you should tell them. Yud He Vav He, Elohei Avotechem. Yud He Vav He, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Yitzchak, the God of Yaakov. Let's say that reality which those who embodied Chesed, Gevurah, and Tiferet were in touch with, whose name is Yud-Heh Vav-Heh. We call Yud-Heh Vav-Heh, even though it doesn't have any name, but Yud-Heh Vav-Heh is what represents it. That's who sent Shalachani Alechem. That is who sent me to you. Zeshmi Liolam, Zezdichi L'Dor Dor. That is my name forever and ever and ever and ever. Yud-Heh Vav-Heh is my eternal name. So this begs the question, what is the question that is begged? First it says, tell him Eya, Asher Eya Shalachani, 3 times Eya sent me. And then it says, my eternal name is Yud-Heh Vav-Heh. That's my name forever. And the way to remember me in every generation. Okay, so I want to go to this issue with the 3 ayahs. Let's see, where do we go here? We go to Likutei Moharan 6.2. Actually, I think let's go to Likutei Halachot 20. The beginning of 6.20, Likutei Halachot 6.20, and then we'll go back to 6.2. Let's look at it says this Orach Chaim, Laws of Reading the Torah, chapter 6.20, from Reb Miles says, and he is referring to this Torah 6 in Likutei Moharan. What is Reb Miles says? Ze b'chinat eya shlishi shamar lo od. This is concerns. This is what the implication of the 3rd ayah, where it says Kotomar Eya Shalachani. It says Eya Shalachani. Ki im tidaktek. If you look really closely at Torah 6, Tiresh Midaber Sham Bechlal, you'll see that Reb Nachman there is speaking in total of 3 types of tshuva. 3 types of tshuva. Now, why do we want to bring in tshuva here? What is the importance of tshuva? The importance of tshuva is that Shmi Yud-Heh Vav-Heh. I mean, that's great to know that my name, that the name, it's like the real name, the ultimate name. But that's the name Yud-Heh Vav is only good. It only works if you can really know Yud-Heh Vav-Heh. And you cannot, unless you're on the highest possible level. What does it mean to be on the highest possible level? It means that you have perfected, you have gone beyond the whole tshuva process. Why do you have to have a tshuva process? Because, and go back to Exodus 10. V'yomer Yud-Heh Vav-Heh el Moshe bo el Paro ki ani hichbaditi et libo. It's because you are in as a neshama that is gotten lost in Mitzrayim. You're dealing with a power that has hardened your heart, and unless you can release that hardened heart, unless you can soften it, unless you can let it open up, which is the double meaning of paro, the hikalut, unless that is exactly what needs to be open. And as long as that isn't completely open, I could tell you a million times that Yud Hey Vav Hey sent me, and your heart is too hardened to get it. You see what I'm saying? Your heart has to be soft. Your heart has to be soft and open. And you can't open your heart because you have too much trauma. Well, you can open your hearts this much, that much. I mean, we all, you have moments we all want to open our hearts. We have heartwarming moments because of the Ruach Haaretz. As Reb Nachman says, if you look in the other Likutei Moran, did I give that one 64? 60 from Likutei Moran 64:6, he says, Ki yesh sham otiot v'dibur. It says they're talking about these within the Mitzrayim says there are otiot, there are letters and signs and wonders. They would say there are energies, there are quantum of energies that are revealing Yud Hey Vav Hey within the darkened space. She'al Yadam Nitava B'riya. This is because it's actually that energy that enables even Mitzrayim to exist, even the simulacrum. So, and where She'al Yadam Nitava, and where are these letters? And you can reveal to others if you have the knowledge of Yud Hey Vav Hey, be'ozne bincha ben binecha, and you in the ears of those that are close to you, close enough for you to have a transmission, a relationship with them. That's the religion of friends. What does he say? Ki ikar klal b'riya hayta b'shvil rachmanato kanal, because the essential, the very essence of this creation is for the sake of divine love. It's the flow and expression of divine love. Let's see a little more just how Reb Nachman puts it here. This is a bria haytal yidei dibor. It's the dibor is the letters of divine love that are concealed within the veneer of Mitzrayim, which is created by the mind that is darkened because of the hardening of the heart aspect. And the hardening of the heart aspect is so that the experience of the softening of the heart can occur. And then the neshama can find its way back to God. So finish just this one that's 64, the number 8 there, it says, Ikar klal b'riya hayta b'shvil rachmanatu kana, is for the divine compassion and love, v'habriya hayta al yedei dibur, the creation, that's to say the manifestation of a place where God apparently is not, which occurs. I mean, you can ask a question here that might be helpful, though we have to be careful, but I think it is reasonable to you look at this and say why. One possible answer is because there has to be bechira. It's because of freedom and the possibility to the power of choosing, the power of self-direction. It's like the neshama has to be able to make a certain effort, and if you have no freedom and the neshama cannot make a certain effort, then you can't have any tshuva. Tshuva is possible because the neshama can want something, and that is a tremendous thing. You know, they have this saying how like to remove a thorn, use a thorn to remove a thorn. So it's to use a thorn to remove a thorn. So because of the freedom of the neshama, it can bind itself, it can create a prison for itself and bind itself to being in that prison, and it can make the walls of the prison more and more difficult to see through. But if you take that, the very power that creates the prison, you could turn against itself. You could use to tear down the prison. And what does it mean? You have to transform your desire from a desire to take more, to find more, to increase the addictive nature of experience within Mitzrayim, the attachment to that, and take that desire and turn it against itself so that it becomes a desire to get out of Mitzrayim. Because use the power that you have to desire is so incredibly strong. But if you but when it's turned in the wrong direction, so that we're more and more and more and more immersed and lost in the simulacrum, in the simulation. But if you turn it in the other direction towards the light, then that thorn becomes a thorn that could remove the other thorn. Okay, so we have to tie this together. Okay, so within there is this the divine love. The whole thing is constructed in such a way that you have freedom to create the simulation and make yourself a victim and a prisoner of your own creation. But you're really not obligated to stay in that prison because of divine Rachmanis. There's a way out of it. And the way out of it is Teshuva. Okay, so what do we mean by Teshuva? Now we come to, let's go back to Reb Nosson. And he says, so the Eya we saw in the verse is mentioned 3 times, and he says, if you're very careful, read very careful the Torah number 6, Kra et Yehoshua in the Likutei Moharan, you will see Shemidaber Sham Bechlal Mishlosh Minei Teshuvot. There are 3 types of tshuva. And each one of the name Eya is one of the 3 levels of tshuva. It says 3 modes of tshuva. I'm going to read a little of this, just a little more of the text, and I'm going to try to just paraphrase and explain the way I understand it, because if we do too much text, we'll have exactly that, too much text and no understanding, no useful understanding of anything, no nafka mina from this. Okay, so suffice to say for now, so there's Eya, Asher Eya, and there's Eya Shalachani. So Reb Nachman is saying that each of Eya, what does Eya mean? Okay, look in here what he says, Ki bat chila miva'el sham she'tshuvahu b'chinan Eya. The first level of tshuva is an aspect of the name Eya, because Eya means ana zamin lemaveh, means I'm ready to be. Eya means I'm ready to be. By the way, I mean, it's very important to realize that the name Eya is the name that goes with Keter. So we're talking about Keter, and we tried to talk about what it means to realize Keter, but how do you get to Keter? You don't get to Keter by saying believe in Yud Hey Vav Hey, because you have no idea what that is, what that's talking about. Right. So that's why Elohim says to Moshe, tell him Eya, Asher Eya, Eya Shalachani. The path of tshuva is the way is the wisdom of reality is the path of tshuva, and the path of tshuva proceeds according to 3 levels of Eya, of I am ready to be. Why? Let's see what he says. Ana zemin lemaveh, v'charka katav sham shetzrichin lasot tshuva ala tshuva. Okay, what does it mean? The first level of tshuva is I'm ready to be. What does that means? And here is the point, that the first level of tshuva is the first level of chachma. The first level of chachma is the first level of bitul. Remember, there's these different concepts and categories of bitul. We can do bitul yesh, bitul b'mitziut, and so forth. There's different degrees you can read about in the Tanya and have no idea what you're talking about, but you'll know the words. And so let's try to have it mean something that we can that will actually might help us find our way out of Mitzrayim. So the first stage is I'm ready to be. Why? Because the first level of Chokhmah is knowing that you aren't. And so the I am the I that you think you are is nothing. You are not that. So if you are not that, then you are in the place when you realize that I'm not that, and then you're in the place where you're ready to actually become real. That's the first level of tshuva. Now, what is the first level of tshuva? What he says there, he's saying that there's a first level of tshuva, then you have to do tshuva on the tshuva, and then even if you've perfected, because your first level of tshuva can never be perfect, but even if you perfect the second level of tshuva, there's still a third level of tshuva. So what are we talking about here? What is the process? Because this is the process to Yud-Heh Vav-Heh, the process to knowing Yud-Heh Vav-Heh, which is the process that Moshe Rabbeinu, as the archetype of Mashiach, is trying to convey to us, is trying to teach us, is a three-step process. It's a threefold process. And what is the process? The first process of Eya, I'm ready to be. This is the process of Boel Paro, face up to your shadow, face up to your trauma, right? It's face up to recognize. And so you're facing up to stuff. In other words, the first level is really the level of discomfort. It's like acknowledging I'm not a happy camper here in Mitzrayim. Right? I could comfort myself. I could do whatever I do. I could have my comfort food. I could listen to my comfort music. I could hang out with whatever people I think I feel happy with and all this kind of stuff. I could make myself happy for now and again. But that will never really, there's no end to how much I'll have to do that, because I'm only what's what Gurdjieff calls, as opposed to conscious suffering, this is called self-comforting. You're self-comforting. But self-comforting is not Boel Paro. So if you want to get all the way to Yud-Heh Vav-Heh, which Moshe Rabbeinu was saying, there is this reality beyond Mitzrayim altogether, and the more you'll know that Mitzrayim, the less you'll know Yud-Heh Vav-Heh, there won't be any Mitzrayim. But if you want to stay in Mitzrayim forever, then okay, go and comfort yourself. It could be, I'll do a comforting meditation. I'll do whatever it is. But to understand the difference between self-comforting and conscious suffering is the first understanding of the path of Teshuva. Right? Teshuva, I'm backing away from where I'm identified. I'm backing into God. I'm backing into Yud-Heh Vav-Heh. I have to back away from where I'm identified, where I'm immersed. And that's basically, so the first level is the body level. It's like the first A is the body level. I see I'm uncomfortable. I don't feel right. And so I'm making the decision to be Eya. Does mean I'm ready to actually be real. But I'm getting to be real by ceasing to be unreal. So I'm stepping out of, backing away from my personality, from my embodied personality, which is holding in this character armor. So like Reich Wilhelm Reich called character armor. It's like in your body, is all this trauma is being held just in the way your muscles are. That's why people did Rolfing, all this stuff. It was Esalen, that ways you got to get it out of, like somebody actually digs into the fascia of your muscles, and it's very painful, but that's the first level of Aya. Now, as the more that one does that and is like confronting, not denying, not repressing, moving closer to God, closer to reality, then the second level, you start realizing, well, you have to do tshuva on your tshuva, because that first level isn't going to be enough. It is definitely going to release. It is a first level, and it gets you to what? It gets you to the mind level. It gets you to the level of where your mind is doing tshuva, not just your body. It's like, so you're doing tshuva for your tshuva because your mind sees that there is a lack of purity in your in your shadow work, that the motivation is too personalized, it's too self-centered. So you get to the level of where the mind is criticizing itself. That's doing tshuva. The tshuva, and that's the second level of Aya. Now, the second level, how do you do the second level of what, practically speaking, how do you do that? What is the second level of Aya? The second level of tshuva is your mind's attention to when you need to, when the Yetzer Hara or the Koach HaMedamer arises, when your motivation slacks, when your motivation is not to back away, to back into God, but you're allowing yourself to be sucked back into Mitzrayim. Every time your mind sees that, your mind recognizes that, and it makes a correction, that which is called killing the Yetzer Hara. You know, it's which is basically exactly the same thing that Ramana Maharshi is talking about when he says kill the ego. It's the same exact thing. Somebody contacted me last week because I referred to the Rebbe Elimelech's Zettel Cotton, where Rebbe Elimelech is basically saying you have to commit suicide. God forbid. I hope nobody thought I meant that literally. I mean, this is a trope, die before you die. It's a very, there's no mystical tradition on the planet that doesn't have something like that. We're not talking about, God forbid, anybody should do any harm to themselves or anybody else. But as a trope, the trope is that you really have to, it's like training the puppy. You just have to, the puppy, you have to put it back where it belongs, right? Put it back where you put yourself back. Your mind has to be watching your mind. So you're watching, the mind is watching its motivations. That's the second level of tshuva. But that level of tshuva is only, there's a third level of tshuva. That's not going to be enough. Why? Because the first level is body tshuva. It's working with the suppressed traumas that are trapped in the very body itself. And the second level, as one opens that, as one recognizes that, faces sorrow and enables those things to release, then you're free to move to the second level. You'll have to do tshuva, because that isn't deep enough, really, even though it's absolutely essential to the beginning of the process of tshuva. But then you get to the mind level, where the mind is watching its motivations. That's the purification level. And I'm purifying my mind. I want to do it l'shem shemaim, and not I want to do it lishma, and not shelo lishma. I don't want to do it for an ulterior motive. I want to do it because my love of God, my recognition of the light and that which is beyond in reality is increasing. The more that increases, the more that's what I want. And I'm doing tshuva for lishma, for its own sake. That means it's for God's sake. Litzorach, which is called litzorach gavoa. It's because God needs this tshuva to be done. Why? So that the divine rachmanis can flow into the halal panui, the place where it apparently doesn't exist. So then that begs the question: what is the third level of Eya? And this is it says, then tell me Eya Shilachani. The third level of Eya is when Kivyachol miraculously something happens. This is called divine grace. You can call it whatever you want. Divine intervention. Divine intervention is when that part of consciousness which is beyond both the mind and the body becomes awake. That's to say, awareness. You become awareness. You move from being the body. That's the first level of tshuva, is identifying with the body, and you have to do that because all the trauma is stored there. And if you try to do the spiritual bypass, it isn't going to be successful because you haven't released the trauma from your body. So you have to start, even though it's really like it's very, very much part of Mitzrayim. Nevertheless, you have to start with releasing the trauma of the body. Then you'll get to where I am the mind, right? So then you're concerned when I am the mind, but I'm ready to be real. Your mind is ready to be real, so it's purifying itself of its less than pure motivations. And in that process, when it gets sattvic enough, the mind gets clear enough and pure enough and strong enough, then the miracle occurs, and Eya becomes awareness. And that's the third level of tshuva. Eya becomes awareness. Then I'm backing away. I'm backed out of being the body. That's to say, thinking I'm only the body. I backed out of that, and I backed into the mind. And then I kept backing further and further into the mind until I bumped into the reality of my awareness. And that the initial stage of awareness is like this is another deep beetle. But it's a beetle which is still it's a personal. It's still a dualism here, where that awareness is my awareness, right? And so I start backing into that awareness. Then I'm doing tshuva. I'm returning on the level of awareness. Thanks for being here, Amy. And as I am here on the level of awareness, as I'm backing deeper and deeper into awareness, I come to realize Yud-He Vav-He. As I come to realize that being which is not individual, which is the one and only, the universal, the absolute, that one. And then I know Eya Shalachani. It's Eya that sends Yud-He Vav-He through my tshuva process, through going through the three stages, the three Eyas. Then I get to the verse. Zeh Shmi Li'olam, Zeh Zichri L'dor V'dor. This is the reality, that unchanging, eternal, absolute one. And when one knows that, no more Mitzrayim. No more Mitzrayim. So that's the process. And of course, you have to remember the map is not the territory. You have to go. Osa Shalom, we step out, right. And then we step forward again. That's right. But you've got to back out of who you think you are. So that's I am not, in order to back into to step forward into I am. And then you have the level of Keter. And that's where we want to be. We want to get to Keter. We want to embody Keter. We want to be on the level of I am not what I thought I was. And of course, this Sulam Aliyad has no real end. So that even though these stages, the rungs of Teshuva, there's no final rung. And yet, the realization of Yud He Vav He is the truest thing that you will ever know or experience in your life. Right. All right. So I'm going to hold here. I Lord to bless us all that we should all commit ourselves to recognize what a rich and integral path is not only available, but probably necessary, that you can't really, at least that's the path that I get out. That's what I think the Torah is teaching me, that you can't do spiritual bypasses. There may be people, like you get once in a Purim, you get a Ramana Maharshi, and in 1 second he flies into total realization. But for the most part, that's not the way it works. For the most part, it's a difficult path, and yet it's a path that has a conclusion, right? It has a tachlis, and I believe we can get there with God's help. So my prayer is that all of us, we should each hear the message. We should receive the Torah that comes through from Moshe Rabbeinu. We should become that Moshe Rabbeinu consciousness that is able to receive and process this teaching, and we should understand the 3 levels of Eya, the 3 levels of Teshuva, and we should have Hatzlacha, and we should help each other in the religion of friends, because we'll do a lot better if we support each other than any one of us can do trying to do it alone. So we're not alone, we're here together, and Baruch Hashem. So I bless us all, and please keep coming back, and so we can work for more and more in this, support each other, and bring more of the Torah, more of the message of this tradition into the Torah, into the mode of the Torah of the future. Ken Yehi Ratzon. Thanks you so much for being here, and please, if you can, join me again on Thursday, Im Yirtzeh Hashem.